Hello everyone and welcome to episode 23 of the Blues News Podcast. Today I'm here with Adam, host of Stonescast, one of the hosts of Stonescast, Wealdstone fan, ahead of Saturday for our match day preview. So firstly, Adam, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Finn. Thank you, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, really good. As we said, it's a nice day. So it's a good day to do a podcast, I reckon. So also today is actually, it's a bit of a record, really, because it's actually the first time that I've done one of these previews twice for the same club. So I did one with Paul Franklin back in September, and now I'm doing this one. So it's the first time a club has featured twice on this. So there you go, nice little record.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Good stuff.
So if we get into talking about Wealdstone, then obviously why I've got you on. So we'll talk about it as like a club, maybe a bit of history to start with. So starting off then, this is Wealdstone's fifth season in a row in the National League. Do you think the club is overachieving, or do you think, providing you stay up obviously this season, there's room to maybe grow and push up the table, or where do you kind of stand on
that? A bit of both. I think the club has massively overachieved in staying in this league as up until this season a part-time club. From a purely kind of wage bill and kind of the haves and the have-nots, we certainly sit down the lower end, if not right at the bottom of that sort of the have-not table. So yeah, we built an identity under our previous manager 𝗘𝟮🗯𝗪 for playing very possession-based football. He moved away and went to Notts County sort of January last year. The club has gone through 7 different managers since that point, including kind of interims and stuff. And yeah, we've really struggled to kind of keep that momentum that he had. That said, what we do have is a very, very good board of directors who have continually tried to kind of close that gap kind of operationally and off the pitch. Strangely, this season we've moved to this sort of hybrid training model. And it's been sort of on the face of it the worst season we've had, although we kind of went into last season knowing in the last game that we could go down. We ended up staying up relatively comfortably, whereas this season we've always been in and around the bottom 4. So yeah, bit of a both to answer your question.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's always interesting when I do these podcasts with different clubs, knowing whether they think there's potential to push on. And we're going to talk about this season obviously a bit later and your relegation fight. But yeah, it's interesting that there is kind of a bit of room to push on maybe. But so one thing that I obviously want to talk about with Wealdstone, probably one of the more famous things about Wealdstone, you might know what I'm going to say, but something that blew up quite a while ago. I can't remember if I spoke to Paul Franklin about it, but you know what I'm going to say, I think, the 𝗪𝗘𝗪𝗘𝗪. And one thing that I wanted to say about that is, do you think that, because Southend recently had it, I don't know if you saw about 𝗪𝗚𝗪𝗘𝗪𝗏, which is like a lost American tourist who came to a Southend game and it kind of blew up.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, and I always think there's kind of marketing opportunities and things you can do with that. Do you think that the Wealdstone Raider and that story blowing up, do you think that really changed anything at the club or not really?
Yeah, massively. It's aside from a lot of kind of non-footballing people thinking we are actually called the Wealdstone Raiders, but it definitely kind of put the club, or him, Gordon, as his name is, kind of on the map. It was a bit of a strange one actually, because the event as it happened in a game against Whitehawk happened, I think it was like March 2013 maybe, and it took about a year for it actually to kind of really grow and go viral. And obviously when it did, it went ridiculously viral. I think he had a number 4 song on the Christmas charts, ridiculous levels of exposure. But ultimately, people came to Wealdstone to see him. There's actually a group called the Northern Stones. I think they're Sheffield United fans. They, I think, came down originally just to meet him, about 4 or 5 of them, on a Saturday when Sheffield United were playing in London on a Sunday. And it's grown, and the kind of the buzz of the club kept them coming back. And I think now, what game they came to recently, but they turned up with a coach load, 50 of them come down. So, there's many other things that it did for him and for the club, and he raised a lot of money. But yeah, absolutely. Although the gimmick has the novelty's kind of worn off a little bit. It certainly didn't do the club, I don't think, any harm.
So it's always interesting when there's a story like that, because with our story with Evan the Shrimper, the American tourist, there was like, I'd say like 95% of the fan base love it and really, really like get involved with it. But I think there's always that sort of small section of fans that are a bit like, we should be focusing on the football, not this, or be a little bit reluctant to get so involved. Was that kind of a little bit of that at Wealdstone, or not so much?
I think I'll just say you're never going to please everyone, right? And he did a great job. Like I say, not just in the eyes of Wealdstone. He raised a lot of money for charity. I think if you spoke to him, I think his fame came at a price. I think it's been quite a tough journey for Gordon as an individual. But yeah, I mean, some people loved him, some people hated him. I think as time went on, people became a little bit tired or tiresome of it. But people still ask, and people still kind of refer to us as the Wealdstone Raiders sometimes.
Have you met him?
Yeah, funnily enough, I actually got the train down to Whitehawk within the day it happened. So yeah. I mean, look, he was a normal guy. He is a normal guy. He was a labourer in Pinner in our local area, who came to games regularly, and he just happened to be in the right or the wrong place at the wrong or right time, and
yeah.
The nature of the internet, people just catch on and something blows up out of nothing. But no, I wouldn't say I know him well, but certainly know of him, and he was and still is sort of fairly regular at the games.
That's I can't believe that you were with him the day it happened. It's just what I can't talk about it. But so if we talk a bit about like Wealdstone and Southend, we're going to talk about Wealdstone's season in a moment. So we've met 7 times now, Southend and Wealdstone. We have won 3. There's been 3 draws, and you've won 1. You've won 1 out of the 7 games that we've played against you. Do you think that playing against Southend was quite a difficult side for you to face?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the obvious thing about those 7 games is they've always been, I think, quite tight and low-scoring games. I don't think there's been a team that's won by more than 1 goal. And yeah, definitely. I mean, just the nature of your support, first of all, at home or away. You've always travelled really well down to us, even despite the postponements we had last year. So you always know it's going to be tough in terms of intimidating, whether it's at Routs Hall or at Grosvenor Vale. It's going to be a good atmosphere. You're going to be well backed, and of course, going into Saturday's game, with you still being in the playoff shout, we know we're going to be up against it with a vociferous home support. Thankfully, it seems like we'll travel fairly well Saturday. I expect us to fill our allocation, and obviously both teams have got a lot to play for. But yeah, it's always it's a game we look forward to. To come up against a former championship side is it's great.
Yeah, well, I must admit when I see Wealdstone on the fixtures list, I'm always happier when it's at home, just for me, because there's always that risk when we play against Wealdstone. Will there be a postponement? I'm not too sure. When there was that one before, I was actually just 2 minutes from the ground in a pizza place eating a pizza, so it's yeah, so I must admit, I do quite like Wealdstone away, but I am happy it's at home, even though it's actually pretty closer if it's away, because you won't know this, but I live in Kent, so it's not really much in it between Wealdstone and Southend. Probably closer to Wealdstone, to be honest. So one thing I also want to speak about. So I spoke about this with a Solihull fan recently, Stuart Wesley, who I had on the podcast, and it's quite a talking point for a lot of clubs, I think. But with Wealdstone, like geographically, there's a lot of teams nearby. Barnet, Boreham Wood, pretty close, and that's not even taking all of the massive London clubs that obviously come with that. Do you think this is a good or bad thing for the club? Because I think when I spoke to Stuart, he made the point that what they need at Solihull is more people who just support Solihull rather than people who support Aston Villa and Solihull, for example. But do you personally think it's a good or bad thing having so many big clubs near Wealdstone?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think a few years ago, and bear in mind, like you spoke a little bit about the history. You go back sort of 10, 15 years ago, we were just getting ourselves out of the Isthmian Premier in front of crowds of 400 or 500. We're now averaging 1,600-1,700 at home. So for us, the club has grown. And I think 10 years ago, the idea that we were trying to attract Premier League or Watford, QPR, they're very close with Fulham, Brentford, blah, 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 all those supporters. And we've always had, ticket incentive deals to try and attract those people. So I think the idea of having transient support and people that would come and sort of have Wealdstone as their second team was the thing. Now I think the club is trying to push on a little bit beyond that, and especially with the younger generation. And again, we've got very, very good ticket offers to attract youngsters. We're sponsored by and we train at Brunel University, along with, I think, just the burst of non-league attributed to people getting fed up with top-level football and VAR and blah, blah, blah. I think there is an acceleration and a desire to make people Wealdstone fans as their first club.
Absolutely. Well, I know quite a few people with Southend that, before supported like pretty Premier League teams, that kind of thing. But then, and you're right with things like VAR kind of killing the Premier League in a lot of ways. And like the whole experience of it is so expensive to go and see Premier League games. And I think now it's a real opportunity opening for these lower league clubs and non-league clubs to build fan bases of their own. And well, you see it with Southend. I mean, we've always had good support. But this weekend, we're probably going to be close to 10,000. We were last game. Against Braintree, it's 9,600. So hopefully we can maybe push that. But there was quite a lot of Braintree. So I'm not sure what kind of the attendance will be for this game. But as you said, it sounds like there's a good amount of Wealdstone coming. So yeah, it's always I think non-league and lower leagues, they are really growing, and you've seen that in the last few years. So it's good. So if we start by talking a little bit about Wealdstone's season so far, obviously there's a couple of games left now. It's really crunch time for both teams, Southend and Wealdstone. We've got so much to play for. You touched on it before, but both teams have so much to play for. Admittedly at different ends of the table, but a really important game for both. So if we talk about Wealdstone's season, it definitely looks like it's been a tricky season for you. I think Wealdstone, since Southend have been in the same league anyway, we've always been, you've always been down the lower end of the table, I'd say, maybe pushing into mid-table, but kind of around there. But going into this game, you sit in 20th, probably your worst season in recent years. And you're one place off the relegation spots, obviously 2 points clear of Dagenham. So why do you think that this season you've been right down there? You said about some managerial switches and some players leaving and whatnot, but what do you think is the reason for you having such a maybe poor season?
I mean, look, let's talk about expectation first, because every season in this league, until something really changes in terms of our status, we're trying to get a new stadium and all that kind of stuff. But as I said, we're at the bottom end, if not at the bottom of that, have not. So every season starts with the basic thing of we just need to try and stay up. So we've kind of, again, you could say if we do manage to stay up, it's job done, and therefore it's a good season. But yeah, it's been a long, tough season, and I think a lot of people will be glad when that final game's out the way. We started the season with Matt Taylor in charge. He subsequently left and went off to Solihull in January time, and we appointed a guy called 𝗘𝟮🗯🗘, who kind of made his name in the Welsh leagues. It was a bit of a left field appointment. I don't think many people saw that coming. Had we had Gibson in charge the whole season, I think we'd be okay. If you compare his points per game since he came in against Taylor's, it's far superior. I think he's about 1.4 points per game, and Taylor was about 0.97. So we've had rotten luck with injuries. I think we're on our 7th goalkeeper of the season. We've struggled for goals, and we're missing key players in attacking places. If it wasn't for the goals of Alex Reid, I think we'd have been buried a long time ago. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is. There's a lot of bad luck there. The recruitment was pretty poor over the summer. A lot of the players we brought in just were either not good enough or haven't really performed. I say the injuries, it's a host of things. It's just been a horrible season. The hope is we can somehow limp ourselves over the line and kind of regroup with Neil Gibson for next season and be intrigued to see what he can do. But I think he's made it quite clear this is a squad that he's inherited and it's not a squad he likes. We've thrown away so many points with conceding late goals, notwithstanding the 2 points we dropped in the reverse fixture at Grosvenor Vale, where we took the lead in the 90th minute and then you guys scored in the 97th, was it? So we've lost, I reckon, 12 points. We were 2-0 up at 𝗪𝗡𝗪𝗑 going into the 89th minute and drew 2-2. So it's things like that are going to cost us. So bad luck, and we just haven't been good enough.
You said about 𝗪𝗘𝗩𝗑𝗪 there, and when I listened to Luke Walsh's podcast, and Paul Franklin was speaking on that the other day, and
He's
he
not
said that no, he was pretty much slating 𝗪𝗘𝗩𝗪. I think he even called him something like a disgrace to football, something like that, and pretty much made the point that he didn't want to be there. Do you share those opinions of him, and do you think he's quite as bad as he was making out?
Paul has a very, very strong opinion of 𝗪𝗘𝗩𝗪. I don't quite share the same level that he does. I think 𝗪𝗘𝗩𝗪 had a good rapport with the players, and I think they respected him as naturally, someone who played at the level of football that he is going to have over players at this level. But there's an ethos and something that works, and almost a minimum requirement of expectations that you need to be successful here. And I don't think he got that as a club. I don't think he demonstrated those behaviours. We need a manager who is going to eke the most out of everything. And you speak to Paul would say 𝗪𝗘𝗪𝗪 spent most of that time that he should have been doing that down the golf course. I think, again, Taylor was unlucky because we had, again, so many problems with injuries, but also he brought in a number of those players in the summer. And ultimately, when he left, he'd picked up 5 wins out of 25, 26 games. So, we are in this position primarily because of his signings and his poor return during the tenure that he was here.
Were you surprised when 𝗪𝗘𝗪𝗪 went to Solihull? Because obviously, Solihull have had their issues this season as well. But last season, they got to the playoff final and the FA Trophy final. So they're quite a decent-sized club at this level, and definitely one that you'd expect to be pushing up the table. Will you expect when he almost made a jump up in clubs to Solihull from Wealdstone, considering he hadn't really done a great job at Wealdstone at all?
So this is the thing, right? I mean, first of all, was I surprised that he left and took the Solihull job? On the face of it, yes. Then when you understand that his best mate, Stephen Ward, is the director of football at Solihull, I think that's where some of the distaste that Wealdstone fans have is that 𝗪𝗘𝗪𝗪 came to us, and it was kind of a bit of a coup for us to get a name like him. But his managerial record prior to us wasn't great either. He'd been sacked at Shrewsbury, sacked at Walsall. And it kind of felt like he was using us as a bit of a leverage to try and resurrect his career. Can't really blame him for that, but, there was a feeling of just being left in the lurch a little bit by him, that he couldn't wait to get out at the first opportunity he had. I think, as well, the realisation for him, which maybe he didn't have coming in until you really get in and get your feet under the table, so to speak, is just how difficult it is managing a club like Wealdstone in the National League. Again, I come back to those have-nots in terms of the facilities we have. Even though we've taken massive steps forwards, the budget, the facilities, the stadium, we know the stadium is creaking and poor and on its last legs. And I think he probably got in and went, geez, this is a lot tougher than I thought, and probably couldn't wait to jump at the chance when it did arise.
Yeah, definitely. I personally, as a kind of neutral fan in this, I was quite surprised when I saw him go to Solihull. You say about, obviously, he's got friends at the club. But, I was surprised that, Solihull would really want him, just on the face value of it, because he, as you said, he didn't have a really good track record before Wealdstone. And, his track record at Wealdstone weren't really too great either. So, if we talk about the game itself then, a win versus us and a loss or a draw for Dagenham would see them relegated and Wealdstone stay up. So how much does this game mean to you and the club?
Yeah, huge. I think the thing for us is it's not just about Saturday's game or Halifax on the last day. It's the implications of losing our National League status in the grander scheme of, I say, we're trying to secure a new stadium and investment around that. That becomes a lot tougher when you drop out of the National League. And going down to the National League South as well will be tough. It's a very, very strong division now. And I think if we did go, the likelihood is we'd probably be looking at making sure we didn't go down again the following season rather than expecting to kind of, challenge and come straight back up. So, for that reason, like I say, with the investment and the stadium, it's huge. It's huge. The world will keep turning whatever happens, but we need a little bit of luck to just get ourselves over that line and try and keep building.
Well, providing you do stay up, obviously, what do you think needs to be done? Because as I said, the past 5 seasons, I believe it is, you've been in the National League, and you've always been down there. I think your highest finish was something like 13th. You pushed up into that kind of region, but you for most of your time in the National League of the past 5 seasons, you've been down the end of the table, down that lower end, and kind of battling relegation or just missing it around there. What do you think needs to be done in the future? It's maybe a hard question, this, but what do you think needs to be done in the future to push on and maybe start challenging the top table and that kind of places?
I mean, it's certainly an ambition that the board have, is that they want the club to push towards the EFL. But that's only going to happen if we can continue to close that gap off the pitch. And inherently that starts with the facility that the club bases itself out of. So Grosvenor Vale we moved to in, I think, 2008. And we've been nomadic since losing our previous stadium in Wealdstone in 1989, 89. So we need to have secure routes with a long-term lease, a training facility and all that. With that, and kind of there's an inherent, I think, assumption here, is that investment comes with that, is that you find a partner who wants to help you build that site and invest in the football team. Now, that crudely means having more disposable wages to get better players. And until really that happens, until there's progress in that space, we're going to come into every season again going, let's hope we can try and stay up with what we've got. So, the likelihood is if we do stay up and we go into next season, it's going to be that same thing. But we'll go into it now with, I hope, 𝗘𝗮𝗑𝗩𝗪, who has, I think, really impressed in the 3 months that he's been here. Like I say, his output in terms of results has been far superior to his predecessor. I expect we will have a massive overhaul of players in the summer and almost start from scratch. And it's going to be intriguing because 𝗘𝗮𝗪 is from the northwest. He was part of 𝗘𝟮𝗪𝗘𝗪 town, North Wales, that area. Him and his assistant Lee Jones, they're all from kind of their Wrexham boys. So it'll be interesting to see recruitment-wise what kind of players they bring in, because this is a new area, new geography to them. But yeah, I think that's the hope. It's stay up somehow by hook or crook this season, and then just to continue to try and move forwards off the pitch with the stadium and operationally.
Something that I wanted to talk about that's probably probably a little bit away from your season as a whole and everything, but something that I think is quite interesting. So it's on the topic of Adrian Mariappa, and I think basically, for those who don't know, he's been taking part in the Ballers League, which is like a weird tournament full of like influencers and football. I don't really watch much of it, I have to admit, but has he received any backlash from the fans for this? Because I know Michael Hector, who plays for Dagenham, he received a lot of backlash because obviously they're in a relegation battle, and then he's midweek on a Monday, every Monday I think it is. He's playing in this Ballers League where he could pick up any sort of injury or be tired. Has he picked up a bit of backlash for playing in that?
So I actually didn't realise that Mariappa had started playing, but he's not the only one in our squad, because Alex Dyer, who's been our captain in the last few games and has 300 odd appearances for Wealdstone. He appeared, and he appeared. So little bit of context here. When we played York a few weeks ago, we went up to York on I think it was the 29th of March. We actually tried to get the game postponed because we didn't have any players. We had a sickness bug that went through the squad, and we only had, I think, 7 fit enough players. So the league refused, told us we had to play. I think we only used 11 players. We lost 3-0, and players, including the management team, were out on their feet. We then played Boston on the Tuesday night, had a couple of players back, but they cancelled training because of the sickness that was going around. 𝗘𝗮𝗩𝗬𝗪 then played in the Baller League on the Monday night, the night before we were due to play Boston, and we had been told by 𝗘𝗮𝗩𝗪𝗬𝗪 that neither him nor 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 would be playing until the season had finished. So, yeah, that certainly put a few people's noses out of joint. As it was, there was a view that, given that training had been cancelled, maybe he'd be given dispensation. It's never actually been confirmed by the club either way. As I say, as it was, we ended up beating Boston 1-0 on the Tuesday night. 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 had a brilliant game, so it kind of got brushed under the carpet a little bit. But 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, I mean, obviously he's a big name, huge experience. He's played at the highest level. He's played in FA Cup finals, all that kind of stuff. He's really polarised opinion with Wealdstone fans with his performances this year. Good leader, but clearly at 37, 38 now, he's physically struggling to keep up with the demands of the game, and I think he's been exposed quite a few times. So, yeah, he's divided opinion, shall we say.
Yeah, it's just something that I wanted to talk about because I think it's an interesting point because we've seen with players like Ben Foster and there's quite a lot of players that are almost bridging up, whereas before it's been like football players almost seen as like aliens in the sense that they're not seen as like normal people. But now a lot of them are getting involved in social media, showing personality a bit more. But I just wonder if Ballers League and actually playing football whilst you already play for a club, I feel like that maybe is starting to push the boundaries a little bit of what should be allowed and that kind of thing. So I was interested to hear your thoughts on that. And yeah, I must admit, if it was Southend player, I don't think I'd be too happy, particularly if we're battling relegation as well.
Yeah.
About this, it's not really ideal.
No, far from that.
So if we wrap it up, really, we've talked about the game itself. So who are some players, and I know one that you're definitely going to name, I'm sure, but well, providing he's not injured or anything, but who are some players that we should be looking out for on Saturday for Wealdstone?
I'm assuming you're probably referring to Alex Reid as the obvious one. And geez, if he's injured, we have got 0 attacking options. But fingers crossed he leads us out on Saturday. Yeah, I mean he's had 2 loan spells. He scored 20 goals in those 2 loan spells. I think what Alex Reid loves is that he's a big fish in a fairly small pond. I think he really thrives in that environment. It's mad how he kind of has turned it on for us. Then he went back to Oldham, and where he's not that big fish, and he kind of although he played a couple of games, he struggled a little bit, and then he came back here. I mean, in terms of a striker, you give him chances, he's going to score goals, and that's I'm not saying our only hope, but I mean, we've really struggled in the last couple of games to create chances. We're missing still so many players. We sold Sam Ashford, who was our other striker, off to Woking, a relegation rival, about 3-4 weeks ago. We had Tyler Walker, who's on loan from Lincoln, guy who's played in EFL, scored lots of goals. He's been a little bit hit and miss for us, but he got injured against Barnet, and I don't think we'll see him for the rest of the season. We've got Mustafa Carriol, who played I don't know how many games for Leeds, Middlesbrough, had a glittering EFL career. He's 37 I think now, but little diminutive, explosive player, good feet. He can cause problems. Probably the standout player for us aside from Reid this year has been 𝗘𝟮𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪�ึ He's very energetic midfielder. He's about 6'2", 6'3", and probably about 10 stone dripping wet. Very wiry frame, but he's very agile, gets around the pitch, scored some really important goals. He got our leveller on Monday. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, pushing up the football pyramid in the years to come. But yeah, we are, as we have been for most of the season. We've got academy kids on the bench. We've got players who we probably know aren't good enough, who we've tried to loan out already to lower levels this year. So the 1-11's not bad, but the depth in the squad it's a real struggle. And the first goal will be so vital Saturday.
Well, something that I did notice when researching is how many there's a real kind of gap in your team in age, because there's so many, like you said, of academy and really young players. I mean, there was like double digits of players under the age of 24. There were so many young players. But then you've got players like 𝗪𝗟𝗪𝗘𝗪𝗑𝗪, who I believe is like 38. 𝗘𝟮, like you said, is about 37 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got so many like old players, but then so many young players. There's a real kind of gap in experience. Do you think that works for Wealdstone, like having such a gap in age, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean that kind of, again, it comes from almost the pecking order of where we get to pick our players from, because we usually have to wait for what's left when it comes to a transfer window. We can't compete with yourselves and others in the league. Alex Reid for us was, although he's on loan, it was a real marquee signing. So yeah, he's almost a bit of an anomaly, and we've tended to pick up players at one end of their career. The loan market and the academy market is one that we've leveraged and really made a success of in recent years. We've had the likes of 𝗘𝟮🗯😘 from Fulham, who is now number one at Lincoln. Aaron Henry had a really good impact when he came from Charlton. Charlie Barker, who came to us twice and we sold, is now captain in Crawley in League One. So yeah, we do tend to go for sort of players at one either end of the sort of the age spectrum, and that's just kind of because we have to. We just can't compete with trying to get National League quality players in their prime.
Well, with these podcasts, I always like to talk about ex-Southend players, and there are two in Wealdstone's team. Probably not the most like key players for Wealdstone, but James Hilton, the goalkeeper, who didn't play for us, I don't think once, but he was here at the start of the season. And obviously, I think he was even before Southend, he was on the bench in the Europa League for Arsenal. So clearly quite a rated keeper at that level. But has he played a game for you yet?
No, I don't think. He might have played in the National League Cup. I'm trying to recall now. Like I say, goalkeepers, we've been through 7 or 8 of them this season.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think we've seen him. Certainly not in the National League. And we have Luca Gunter, Chris Gunter's son. He came in on loan from Tottenham, but he's actually just lost his place in the last few weeks. And we've got another young goalie called 𝗘𝟮𝟯😘𝗪, who's actually been with the club probably 3 or 4 years, and most years he just goes out on loan to a lower league club. But Gibson gave him his chance in that Boston home game, and he's not the biggest, but he's very, very agile. His distribution is very good, and he is so quick on his feet. So I mean, yeah, we'll see. I'm assuming 𝗪𝟑𝟑 will start in goal on Saturday.
Well, the other Southend player, Dion Woodman, and I believe he went out. Did he go out loan to St Albans? But
3 times, yeah.
Yeah. So has he really made an impact at Wealdstone? Because I know when he was at Southend, we were actually a little bit gutted to see him go, really. And I think if it hadn't been for our embargo and issues and everything, we might have even tried to get him, because he had some real quality games for us. And I was quite surprised that he didn't go to a club similar level of Southend or maybe higher. But it doesn't really seem like he's got kicking at Wealdstone.
So if you'd have asked me this a month ago, I would have said exactly that. Yeah. He came in and then he went back out to St Albans, came back in because we were short of players, and he came back in for I think it was an FA Trophy game away at Aldershot in November, and I feel like he probably wanted the ground to eat him up at the end, because he had an absolute disaster of a performance, and I think a lot of Stones fans just wrote him off, and then off he went out to St Albans again. But because of this sickness bug that we had and so many injury problems, we're missing Jack Cook, who I know always seems to play well against Southend. He's been out for the last 4 or 5 games, and I don't think we'll see him again this season. But yeah, Dion came in for, I think it was actually the Boston game. Came back in kind of out of the blue, and had an outstanding performance against 𝗘𝗮𝗩𝗪𝗘𝗪, who's obviously a very tough opponent at Boston. And he seems to have just grown in stature. The time away playing at St Albans has probably done him some good. And yeah, I mean, I expect him to be probably the first defenders on the team sheet Saturday. So yeah, fingers crossed we're now seeing the real Dion Woodburn.
That's good because, I was really surprised when I didn't see him kind of kick on and do well. But because you can tell there's such a player in there. And he had, I can't remember who it was against. It might have been, to be honest, I can't remember. It's pretty like a year ago now, if not more. But he had such a good game. Might have been someone like Dawkins, someone like that at home. And he just played so well. Such a good game. And then we didn't see him much after that, which was, quite surprising, really. So we're kind of near the end of the podcast now. I've kept you here for quite a while, but I've really enjoyed speaking to you and everything. So we've spoken a lot about Wealdstone, obviously. That's why I've had you on. But we're going to talk a little bit about Southend, just to wrap it up. So from like an outside perspective for you, are there any Southend players? Obviously, I think I could maybe one that you're going to name, but that stick out to you in particular?
Do you know, it's interesting because I commentated on the National League stream for the home game back in, September, October time. And I compared it to, and just to add in, I also then commentated on the game last season. And I felt I didn't fear Southend like I did the season before when you had Cardwell and Waldron and who else did you have up front? Someone else. And I felt like your forward line this year was far less formidable. I know Peppel did all right, and now he's at Chesterfield. I've always rated 𝗘𝟮𝗪𝗧𝗢𝗓. I think 𝗘𝟮𝗪𝗧𝗓 is a very, very tidy player, knits it together. Jack Bridge always causes problems down that left-hand side. And obviously we're well aware of certain right-backs' goal-scoring feats this year. So yeah, Gus Scott-Morris will be, it'll be interesting to see how he fares up against our fullbacks this weekend.
Well, I think Gus maybe needs to step it up if he wants to get to the 20, though, because he said he wants to get to 20 goals. And he hasn't scored in quite a while. So I think he's 2 or 3 goals off, maybe. So he's going to have to get a goal or two in the Wealdstone game if he wants to beat that. But I think Jack Bridge, it's been a difficult season for him. Whether he'll start or not, I'm not too sure. I believe he started last game, but it's been a bit up and down, really mostly down for him. It hasn't been nearly as good as he was the season before that. And 𝗘𝟮𝗪𝗧𝗢𝗓's just coming back from an injury. So, and I think you're right about our striker issue has been an enormous issue this season, not scoring enough goals. I think Charlie Kendall's probably our best attacking threat at the moment, I'd say. Quite a young player, but a lot of potential. Scored a brilliant goal against Ebbsfleet. We'll have to see. But I think Gus is probably the one to watch out for there. So the last thing really that I want to talk about before we wrap it up is something that I ask everyone. Really, it's probably the one thing that I ask everyone who comes on. So how do you think? So firstly, what is Wealdstone's style of play, and how do you think that will match up with Southend's style of play to make for an entertaining game?
I'm not sure I know what our style of play is. We tend to go a lot more direct, or we certainly did when we had Reed and Walker up front. I think there's just a view of, get it to your dangerous players. We do tend to go quite direct, which is a sort of a step away from the very possession-based game that we had under Stuart Maynard. But I think it's more just trying to play to the players that you've got. I think the tough part is knowing which 11 is going to actually make it out on Saturday. But I assume it will be very similar. Like I say, the problem we've got is we just don't really create enough chances. So that's why I said, like, in terms of the context of the game, for me, the first goal was crucial. If you get that first goal, I don't really see there's much hope for us, and it will be almost damage limitation, bearing in mind that goal difference could become a thing. If we can get the first goal and we get something to, something to cling to and something to build on, even staying in the game, which I think strangely was what we tried to do at Boston. We will try and keep the ball as much as we can and try and nullify your threats. But the problem was with Boston scored after 2 minutes, and it's like, well, you have to come out a bit, and we controlled the game, but we didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first goal is crucial. Must admit, I'm not entirely sure what to expect now with Southend, because I know you've had a lot of players who've kind of come and gone. Yeah. Is 𝗪𝗘𝗩𝗘𝗪 still there?
Yeah, Paul Fulson. Yeah, he's him and Leon Parallon have come in recently, and they are obviously he signed quite a while ago, but he wasn't really given a chance. It was really weird. He wasn't given a chance properly until about a month ago, and yeah, he's pretty much flipped our season on his head. It was a superb player, and him and Leon are probably, well, not probably, definitely our best two attacking threats now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I say, to answer your question in terms of styles, it's probably going to be a very, dare I say, agricultural game, and I think for us it's more just trying to stay in the game for as long as we can. I think we're still pretty decent at home. That's where we pick up a lot of our points. So the hope is, and of course, given Saturday's 5:30 kickoff, we'll kind of know where we are given all the 3 o'clock games. And there's a hope. I'm trying to think where Dagenham are. They are home to Altrincham, who have obviously you all have eyes on the game as well. So that, there's a hope that Alty can do a bit of a favour, which I know you won't want. So yeah, it's just, we'll see where we are at 5:30. And it could be that a point could be a very vital point for us. And then I think we'll be a lot more hopeful going into Halifax on the last game of the season. And again, we'll be looking for their result, hoping they get a result Saturday, and maybe they can rest players for that last game. But I mean, one game at a time.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Adam. I'll let you enjoy the lovely weather. But there's one more thing to ask, which is, what is your score prediction for Saturday?
It's the head against the heart. The heart says we can try and do what we did. I think the first time we came to you and nick a scrappy back to the wall 1-0. The head says we're going to lose. If I'm honest, I think it's going to come down for us needing to get a result against Halifax. So, honestly, I'd be surprised if we got anything.
Fair enough. Have we got a final score prediction, maybe?
I'll go 2-0 Southend.
2-0 Southend. Well, I think I'm going to go for. I might go for a 3-1 Southend. It's got quite a few goals. Good game. But yeah, hopefully a win. But yeah, good luck for Saturday. Is there anything you want to say before I end it?
No, nothing, mate. Pleasure. Really good to talk to you, mate.
Yeah, thank you very much. It went on for quite a while, but really enjoyed speaking to you. And hopefully everyone at home enjoyed watching too. I'll leave all the links to Stonescast and everything in the description below, so people can go and support that. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Adam. I actually, in just over half an hour, I'm doing my second podcast of the day. I've never done that before. I'm going to be knackered by the end of the day. I'm actually interviewing another Adam 𝗘𝗪𝗓, who's a legend of Southend. So, 2 Adams in one day. There you go. First one is done. Thank you very much, Adam. And yeah, I really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you very much. If everyone enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe. Give Stonescast a follow as well. And yeah, I'll see you all on the next one.